Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Etiquettes of Salaat, Part 13, First Discourse, Chapter 12. Concerning the fact that the love of the world, Hubb dunya, leads to the mind wandering, and thus is an impediment to the focus of the heart, Huzur al-Ghalib, and concerning its cure to an extent that is feasible. Okay, now this is the final chapter of the first discourse. These set of discussions have been very important, especially the last three, of which this is the last of the three, where Imam Rahmatullah alayh has entered into practical protocols for us to practice. He's gone into detail. Many etiquettes have been covered and they were very useful, inshallah, and it led to Imam saying that most etiquettes are precursors and preliminaries to acquiring the focus of the heart, Huzur al-Ghalib. And this is Huzur al-Qalb is very important because it's a standard to which one can evaluate one's salat and other ibadat. And then we went through traditions, just emphasizing and highlighting, and then Imam started going into practical details. And from what we had gathered from the previous chapter, he said that the reasons, the impediments to acquiring Huzur al-Qalb ultimately are traced to two important impediments. One is the nature of the wandering mind, the imaginative faculty of the eye, and the second is love of the dunya. In relation to the first, Imam gave some practical steps on how we can tame and discipline, and how it's possible to tame and discipline the wandering mind in one's salat. And this itself, on understanding it, one can apply it to other ibadat also. But in relation to salat, he said just do the contrary. And what that meant was, whenever the mind wanders off during the salat, at whatever component of the salat you are, return to the component. But returning isn't sufficient. You have to understand what that component, what significance it bears, its meanings, its esoteric meanings, and you have to absorb yourself there in the beginning in order not to wander as much. And this has to grow until that focus of the heart becomes completed, and now you can do true salat. Otherwise, to the extent and percentage and fraction that you acquire Huzur al-Qalb, your spiritual salat will only give fruit to that extent. Now, this final chapter, Imam now wants to speak about Hubb dunya as the other main cause, which is an impediment to acquiring the focus of the heart, the Huzur al-Qalb, and he's going to speak about some practical steps here too. Now, here again, and he speaks quite a bit in this chapter. He writes, it's quite lengthy compared to the other chapters, but still, the main paragraph is very short. Everything else is just pivoted around this main paragraph. Some of them more related to the main paragraph than others. But it's that main paragraph where the practical way to acquire Huzur al-Qalb through eliminating this new threat of Hubb dunya, this is very important to take heed of and then to practice, inshallah. Okay, that was just an introduction. Imam writes, according to the dictates of one's fitrah, whatever the heart acquires an affinity to, that constitutes the direction of one's attentiveness and acts as one's beloved one. Whatever the heart has an affinity with, or has an affinity towards that thing, let's call it X. X becomes this direction of one's attentiveness. X becomes one's beloved one. Now, X may be good, X may be bad, but the thing, whatever the heart acquires this affinity towards, that becomes one's direction of attentiveness. And whenever one is preoccupied with something that acts as an impediment to one's deliberating over, and acts as an impediment to one's being attentive to one's beloved, as soon as one is released from that preoccupation and interference, the heart immediately flies towards its beloved. Now, Imam will give examples soon, but very briefly, let's say if I have a love towards my university life, sometimes I get preoccupied in the worldly life, and that disenables me, or avoids, or acts as a hindrance to me focusing on that beloved, i.e. university life. However, once my preoccupations in the house, outside, doing the shopping, once all that diminishes, now I have a free mind, free time, the heart suddenly flies towards that university life. That's one point. But he gives a very interesting example which one can benefit a lot, and the way he writes is very eloquent in this analogy that Imam gives a few paragraphs down. People of gnosis and those who undergo divine attractions and inspirations, assuming their hearts have strengthened and are ingrained in inspirational divine pulse and are ingrained in love, they see and witness their perfect beloved one in all existence, in all existing beings. Their motto, their slogan is, as the tradition says, مَا رَأَيْتُ إِلَّا وَرَأَيْتُ اللَّهِ فِيهِ وَمَعَهُ. I don't see. This is attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam and can be applied to all the Imams. I don't see, save that I see Allah in something or with something. So he's saying, I don't see anything save that I see Allah in it and with it. Now, in it and with it, is how the Quran calls Allah huwa al-zahiru wal-batin. He's the outer, he's the inner. Here Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is saying, I don't see anything save Allah being in it and with it. Huwa al-zahir, with it, wa huwa al-batin, fihi, in it. Now this doesn't mean a physical in or a physical with. It's not a physical juxtaposition with Allah. One has to think beyond that. You shouldn't commentate everything in the physical domain. Now this and also this same tradition has been, we find in other traditions similar to it, that's right, or add rather, I don't see anything save Allah before it and after it and with it and in it. قَبْلَهُ وَبَعْدَهُ وَمَعَهُ وَفِيهِ. Now that's clearly defining the verse which reads هُوَ الْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ وَالظَّاهِرُ وَالْبَاطِنُ. It's like the thread example, when one walks in the shop and they see nothing but thread. That, for example, a coat, in it, outside it, with it, and so on and so forth, it's all thread, but it's in dimension, in a particular shape, mold, and so on and so forth. But one only sees thread. The same here. Now what the theologians call Allah, the philosophers call wujud or existence, and the Urafa call it who. It's all the same reality though, depending on your take though. Okay. In any case, these people, the people of Gnosis, they witness their perfect beloved one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in all existing things. That's one point. Then Imam says that someone may pose the question, so why would the Holy Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam say, sometimes a layer of dust sets upon my heart and I seek forgiveness from Allah 70 times a day? The answer, Imam says, is because the seeing per se of the beloved's beauty in existing things such as Abu Jahl, this is a form of darkness and sets darkness upon one for the perfect ones. They can still see Allah in everything, but seeing Allah, in this creature who has decided to act in a particular manner, this is difficult for such people. They haven't done anything wrong. There's no mistake. It's because of their high spirituality they acquire these states. But it's a kind of darkness or impurity sets upon them. Well, impurity is not the right word actually, sorry. The Farsi word is kudura. It's a kind of, a heavy setting upon one. An uncomfortable, heavy, tense, uncomfortable feeling. Because now they're seeing Allah, but it's a pity that it's in Abu Jahl, for example, who action-wise is the peak of vice, but they still see Allah, but it's difficult for them. They're uncomfortable with this. And if one's heart is not at a strong level, like the perfect ones who see Allah in all things, if the heart is not at a strong level, i.e. the multiplicity of the worldly life acting as an impediment to experiencing a presence before Allah, with such people, since they're drowned in the preoccupations of the worldly life, they can't see Allah in all things, maybe in some things, that presence at least in some things. With such people, with a weaker level of the heart, as soon as these preoccupations decrease, the heart flies towards its beloved. And if that beloved is Allah, it will fly before Allah, towards Allah. But if it's the school, work, children, family, prestige, power, it will fly towards that. Then Imam says the people of Gnosis deem those who seek other than Allah as seekers of the worldly life. That's how the people of Irfan and Ma'rifah see those who seek other than Allah. And their beloved, whatever it is the source of their affinity, and they're attentive towards that. Those seekers of the worldly life, their beloved now, since they seek other than Allah when they act in their daily routines in this world, their beloved is whatever is the source of their affinity. Now these people too, assuming their love becomes extreme, as they live, they're always recalling and are attentive to such worldly matters. If someone loves their business, they're always thinking of it. If that love becomes extreme, they're always thinking of that business. In the house, they keep on speaking about it. In the workplace, in the toilet, kitchen, bedroom, if the love becomes extreme, all they can think of is that beloved, which is business, for example. For some it's a PhD, for some it's prestige, for some it's, for example, giving, a good speech, anything. Shaitan can deceive anyone in any way. The Iblisi forces, one has to be careful. The intellect has to be abided by, as we spoke about a few sessions ago. Then, and assuming their love of the world, for example, is less extreme, whenever they're freed from preoccupations that may distance them from worldly matters, they immediately fly to recalling such matters again. So it's repeating what he said in the last paragraph, but just phrasing it in another way. So if the love someone has is extreme, wherever they go, however preoccupied they are, since the love is extreme, they always recall that beloved. Now, be it Allah, or be it business, or be it anything else. Depends what the heart has an affinity towards. But assuming that love of the world, for example, is less extreme, love of the world, love of one's job, power, knowledge, and so on and so forth, here, Whenever they're freed from preoccupations, they fly to these matters. But because when they're preoccupied though, since their attentiveness is weak, is at a lower level, is less extreme, they forget their beloved. Only when they're free from these preoccupations in one's daily life, only then do they fly and recall such matters again. Now Imam gives an interesting analogy now, and he writes it in a very nice way, and he starts with this, and after giving this analogy, he starts giving the preliminaries until it leads to the main paragraph. He says, lovers of the world, the worldly life, when they're preoccupied, for example, in the bazaar, in the university, workplace, with their children, family, prestige, whatever, these interferences don't allow such lovers to recall the world. But then, when it comes to the time of the adhan, okay, so someone who is a lover of the world, but then they're preoccupied. They're either preoccupied in the workplace or wherever, and it makes them, these mental interferences of those preoccupations, they have to work, they have to do this, do that, it prevents them to focus on a particular love they have in the worldly life, a certain love that they have, now whatever that is, other than Allah. So these interferences in their daily lives don't allow them to focus on their particular beloved one. However, when it comes to the time of the adhan, Imam says, they become free from distractions and preoccupations. Because when it's the time, because these people are mu'min, for example, now, okay, they have this particular love towards a worldly matter, and they can't think about it too much when they're doing their work or they're studying and so on and so forth. But when that time of azan comes, when they leave everything behind to do their salat, all of a sudden one realizes that all they're thinking of at the time of salat are those worldly matters that one had an affinity towards, but couldn't focus on them because he was preoccupied with the workplace. And now is the time of adhan, and he's not thinking, he has no preoccupations at the workplace, he's now only, he has some time off now, and he's now going to do the salat. All of a sudden, everything, that beloved, comes to one's mind. And it's a time of salat, but one is thinking all the time now, during the salat, of one's worldly beloved one. It's as if, Imam says, if the takbiratul ihram is the key to eliminating the impediment between the person and the worldly beloved one. If it's, let's say, money, but they couldn't think of money during the day because of their preoccupations, at the time of salat, now the preoccupations have gone, all they think of now is money. If the thing that they loved was their job, at the time of salat, now the preoccupations and interferences have reduced. All they think during the salat, when they say Allahu Akbar, it all starts. The mind wanders now towards their beloved, which is, let's say, their job. This is very delicate here. Has it ever happened to you, for example? Why do people, this is quite a common question, that in the salat we can't focus. What's the problem here? See, now Imam is beginning to answer these type of questions. The problem is your beloved one. Your beloved one has to be Allah, it's someone else. Imam then says, it happens that one may finish the salam of the salat without having realized anything that had been executed. That's incredible. Now, what is meant to be one's mi'raj is a means to recalling other than Allah. This salat, which is meant to be your mi'raj, your route to proximity, divine proximity. But what has it turned out to be? It's now the key to you thinking of your beloved, which is other than Allah, whatever that beloved is. And that's why Imam says, after 40 to 50 years of Salat, nothing has been added or acquired save darkness of the heart. If they were to be of benefit, if one's Salat was to be of benefit, the results should be, and this is how you can tell if your Salat are of any kind of benefit, if you're benefiting, the results should be humility and subservience, rather than pride and arrogance and self-conceitedness. It doesn't matter. You may be a seminary student, but you're full of pride, full of arrogance. You're only a first-year student. You don't know how to speak with your elders. You don't know how to speak with your community members. You've benefited nothing. Your beloved one was your seminary studies, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these, the pride, the arrogance, self-conceitedness, these are the means to one's spiritual downfall. And at the time of Salat, which is meant to be the means to your spiritual elevation, you just think of things which are a means to your spiritual downfall. And so, since our hearts are drowned in the love of the world, and we aim but to open our opportunities and expand our dunya, this love of the world acts as an impediment for one being in the presence of the All-Holy. And this is the impediment which inhibits one to acquire huzur qalb, that focus of the heart. Its cure, Imam says, two things. One, beneficial knowledge, and two, beneficial action. Now, beneficial action is the main paragraph, but he starts to explain it. He goes through the preliminaries, and he starts with explaining what he means by beneficial knowledge. So Imam writes, beneficial knowledge for eliminating love of the dunya is equal to, how? Because we want to eliminate this love of the dunya so that our huzur qalb can be enhanced. There are two things you need: knowledge that is beneficial to you, and then action. Beneficial knowledge that you need to eliminate hubbud dunya is that you have to contemplate over three things, he says. But look how important tafakkur is once again. You have to contemplate over, one, the results that arise when such an illness, hubbud dunya, is cured. First, contemplate on that. Next, the harms of the destructions caused by hubbud dunya. That's the second thing, and Imam will speak indirectly about these soon. And thirdly, the comparison between the presence and the absence of hubbud dunya within oneself. Now, this to some extent has been covered in 40 hadith, and Imam suffices with a few traditions highlighting the point. I'll go through most of the traditions. I think there are 2 or 3, but I won't go through one of them. But the rest, inshallah, I'll touch upon. And then when he gives these traditions, but then he goes into the practical protocol, and that's very important. That we have to understand a lot. But you can refer to 40 hadith. 40 hadith is a very good book. It's ethical irfani. It would have been ideal if someone would read through 40 hadith before Adab Salaat. I mean, 40 hadith is a book that has a lot of, delicate dimensions to it. It has to be opened up, like Adab Salaat. Imam's works he wrote himself. These are his own words. And this is one of the benefits of these kind of books. Some people write books, but they have a team of writers, and the team of writers write for them. The work loses its luminosity. There's a very good scholar, and his tafsir classes, they're on the internet, word to word. But when his tafsir works are published, that light is lost in the published tafsir books. But on the internet, the tafsir, there's a lot of light there, and one benefits much more. And the reason is because when 20 people are writing something with 20 pens, 20 styles, and 20 differing degrees of knowledge, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's all his writings, but still it has an effect. Now, let's go through some traditions. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, the root to all evils is love of the world. You see? Now Imam says, contemplating over this tradition should be enough. It's the root to all evils. Murder, pillaging, oppression, stealing, all emanate from hubbud dunya. With this illness, one will be distanced from all virtues of excellence, such as courage, chastity, benevolence, and justice, which are the root to all ethical virtues. These aren't compatible with hubbud dunya. Divine knowledge, tawheed in action, tawheed in attributes, tawheed in essence, seeking truth, seeing truth, these are all incompatible with hubbud dunya, because the heart is occupied with other than Allah. When you're occupied with the worldly life, if that happens, your tawheed will be affected, your practical tawheed will be affected. You may know all the theoretical tawheed there is to know, but that's of no use. Your practical tawheed in action, your practical tawheed in attributes, your practical tawheed in essence, you're seeing the truth, you're practically seeking the truth. All this is incompatible when the heart is drowned in the worldly life. Chapter 33 verse 4, no one has two hearts, meaning one can only be occupied. That source of affinity can be only one thing. You can't love Allah and love the world. No one has been granted two hearts. And this tranquility of the heart, the composure of the mind, these are incompatible with the love of the worldly life. However, honor, magnanimity, true freedom, these arise when one is inattentive to worldly matters. Only then will you have honor. When you're inattentive, you're only attentive to Allah. Innal izzata lillah jami'a. Innal quwwata lillah jami'a. Magnanimity, freedom. It's only when you're inattentive to worldly matters. Whereas emanating from hubbud dunya, love of the world, or traits such as lowliness, you begin bowing down to anyone. You're so lowly because the hubbud dunya has predominated over you, you begin bowing down to people. Spiritual poverty, right? You're so poor that you debase yourself on a spiritual level. Tama', for example, hirs. Tama' and hirs, they both mean greed. However, with tama', it means when one sets one's eyes on another person's property that you have no right over. But with hirs, it's agreed that one never becomes satiated from capital and status and other things. Other things that emanate from hubbud dunya, you become a slave. You become a captive and captivated by your whims and passions. Flattery, it's because of your intense love of the dunya. You begin expressing flattery. These are all illnesses. However, compassion, merciful, graciousness, lovingness, maintaining relations, these are all contrary in nature to hubbud dunya. But holding on to grudges, hatred to others, oppressing, cutting off ties, these are all born out of hubbud dunya. Then Imam goes through a tradition. It's a long tradition, and it's useful for the readers to read. There are some points in it, but it's a very long tradition, and with your permission I'll skip that. But the next tradition is a tradition during the Mi'raj of the Holy Prophet, where Allah says, O Ahmad, assuming a servant, praised to the extent of the prayers of the residents of the heavens and earth, and fasts the fasts of the people of the heavens and earth. And like angels, they don't eat, and they wear the garments of servitude. They do all this, but thereafter, if an iota of hubbud dunya or ostentation, now you see, in Arabic, ostentation, if it's you want others to hear you, the Arabs call that the term sum'ah. But if you want others to see you, okay, there's no sincerity of actions, you're not dedicating your actions to Allah, you want others to see you though, the Arabs they term that riyah. But if you want others to hear you, they call that sum'ah. I broadly translated as ostentation. I couldn't find the English equivalents for these two separate terms. But if an iota of hubbud dunya, an iota of love of the worldly life, or ostentation through hearing. People who give speeches, but it's not done for Allah. They want others to see them through hearing. This is where the scholars have to be careful, especially me. Thereafter, Allah says, if an iota of hubbu dunya, or ostentation through hearing, or leadership of the dunya, leadership, it can be of anything, from the small to the large, or popularity of the dunya, or its glitter, if an iota of any of these things, or its like, enters one's heart, Allah says, they will not be by my side in my house, and I shall exit my love away from their heart, and I shall make their hearts darken until they forget me, and I won't let them taste the sweetness of loving me. The sweetness they'll never taste, even if they go to heaven. And people, they can exaggerate on what heaven is. There's a minimum to heaven. Even children may go there. Even people who are incompetent will go there. Animals may go there. We want something much more. Our potential is much more. Don't just limit and confine your potential to the kind of recreational heaven where all you think is the huris, the palaces, the food, and so on and so forth. There the tradition ends. Once this is acknowledged, Imam Khomeini says, the rational person who desires salvation will then, if it's truly acknowledged, these two traditions and what the content of them, the truly rational person desiring salvation will deem it necessary upon oneself to eliminate this deadly tree of the hubbu dunya growing from within. How? So far it was about beneficial knowledge. We've discussed that. But how can they, in practical terms, eliminate this deadly tree of the hubbu dunya? Beneficial knowledge, we've discussed that as a preliminary. Beneficial action. Now, Imam is going into that important paragraph. He says the practical cure to eliminating hubbu dunya, so that huzur qalb, that focus of the heart, be enhanced. Now remember, the practical cure to taming and disciplining the imaginative faculty of the eye, that wandering and escaping and loose mind, there it was doing the contrary, and absorbing oneself in the salat, action to action, never slipping away, and whenever the mind wanders, you keep on going back. However, the practical cure to eliminating hubbu dunya, though, is, Imam says, incredible. There he said, do the contrary. Here he says, do the opposite. Now this is old school. This is the traditional school that Imam is putting forward here. Many contemporary urafa, some of them don't even agree with this method. But this is Imam Khomeini. He's passed his test. He knows what he's talking about. He's a'lam. He's most knowledgeable in this field. Do the opposite. Now what does it mean, do the opposite? He gives examples. If your attachment or affinity pertains to capital, open your hand of generosity and give and donate all your wajib and mustahab charities. The wajib charities, khums, zakat, kafara, fidya, radd madalim, and so on and so forth, whatever. The mustahab charities, whatever. This is in fact one of the wisdoms behind giving charity in Islam, is so that you break that affinity that you have with the worldly life. This is why Islam has this. Imam has gone into the ratio legis, behind the wisdoms, behind the Sharia, and now he can bring a practical protocol for us. Hence, it's even mustahab for one to donate that which he likes and has an affinity towards. Don't you see in chapter 3, verse 92, it reads, you will never attain piety until you spend out of what you hold dear. You may go to heaven. You may have that minimal heaven, but do you want to acquire the station of birr, piety? You have to do much more. The tariqah has to be worked upon. You can't suffice with the minimum anymore. Spend out of what you hold dear. Now, then if you're attached to prestige, kill it with humility. If you're attached to seeing yourself superior, see yourself as low and do things opposite to what you're doing. If you're attached to leadership, quit. If you're attached to having the best, get the next best thing. If you want the best car, the best thing, get the second best car. If you can't get the third best car, fourth best car, kill it. Kill the hubbud dunya. The nafsul ammara has to be eliminated. Now someone will say, well, how can we do this? Because we can go over the top very easily. Yes, you can. Depends on you're married or you're not married. As long as you stick to the Sharia, you don't do anything against the Sharia. For example, you do something, you give your house, where will you live with your family and children? But let's say you have 2 houses. Yes, give it away. No one will suffer there. If you have 3 cars, give it away. No one will suffer. You don't have to get the best of everything. As long as the Sharia isn't compromised. You have rights to your wife, children, husband. Or you don't do anything which is irrational. Or you don't do anything which harms you significantly. You see, these are the parameters and criteria you have to take in mind when you want to practice this practical protocol that Imam has given to eliminate the hubbud dunya. One must realize that however much one goes after the world, one's sense of acquisition. Now that was the important paragraph. Now Imam is drifting off a bit, but still it's important. One must realize that however much one goes after the world, one's sense of acquisition increases more and more towards it. One's affinity will increase, and one's sense of regret of not having the dunya will increase too. Regretting losing it, or even regretting not having it in the first place. One keeps seeking the dunya with pains and burdens, and whatever it takes, they keep on seeking it. The thirst for more increases, and one continues one's search, ready to bear even more pain in one's quest for the dunya. And even on acquiring it, they will always desire more or something else, the next thing. The thirst will never end. And this route leads to one's eventual destruction. That's interesting. He says the thirst will never end. It's a very important point lying under this sentence. He says after it, there's no end to the fitra's desire of infinite perfection. Man, one's innate nature is after perfection. Perfection that is infinite. However, those who don't go the right path, they have infinitely gone wrong and they have taken the wrong course. But they keep on going infinitely because they think this is perfection. A big car, a big house, family, all this. They think this is perfection. They do whatever it takes. The fact that they're seeking perfection, that will never change. The route to infinite perfection, that will never change. It's innate within one. It's in one's fitrah. Even Shem, by killing Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he thought that was perfection. He was seeking perfection. He made a mistake in relation to the misdaq, the actual application of it. But it never ends. Otherwise, everyone is after perfection in power, knowledge, etc. And they move towards it. It's predestined within them. But they choose what constitutes the right way, some people, and so they can continuously tread upon the right way, and some, they choose the wrong. But either case, they continuously tread upon the route they choose. They're after perfection. But those who choose the wrong route, they continuously tread upon the wrong route, and their treading will not stop even on this wrong route until they reach that final destruction of the self. And Imam Baqir alayhi salam, Imam Khomeini, he ends with 2 traditions. The first, which highlights the last paragraph, Imam Baqir alayhi salam says, the example of the greedy with respect to the dunya is like the example of the silkworm. The more it spins thread round and round itself, the more it becomes distanced from salvation until it dies of sorrow. The silkworm dying. Now, to have that in mind, I'll come back to it in a minute. Then Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says the parable of the dunya is like seawater. The more a thirsty person drinks from it, the more thirst one becomes, and this continues until one dies. Now here, look, spinning and quenching thirst, these are predestined. Spinning is predestined for the silkworm. Quenching thirst is predestined in one. One's seeking thirst is one's innate nature asking for that. However, it must be done in the right way. If it's done the wrong way, and you just keep on drinking from the seawater, then you'll die eventually. You were always after quenching the thirst, but you chose the wrong way. But the seeking of that quenching of thirst, which is perfection, you sought the wrong way. Everyone is after perfection, infinitely. There's no end to it. Okay, that ends the first discourse, and inshallah, after the months of Muharram and Safar, and maybe a bit after that, and when I come back from Tabligh, inshallah, we'll continue with the second discourse. You have to forgive me any mistakes that I've mentioned throughout these sessions in the first discourse. You have to attribute them all to me, never to Imam. Imam's status is much higher. I'm embarrassed to even give these commentaries to you, but I feel that this is something which is missing and many people can benefit, everyone to their own degree. Iltamas dua wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi.